Welcome to episode 3 of A Beginner's Guide to Hinduism. In this, we will look at the concept of God in Hinduism. Before we dive in, I should mention something that might be useful as we go through this. One of the recurring themes in Hindu scriptures and philosophy is that the teachers always provide two types of answers to most questions. The first type of answers is provided at what is called the absolute or transcendental level. The answer at the absolute level is usually taken directly from the Upanishad and interpreted appropriately. It tends to be either abstract or stated as a conundrum instead of being direct. It is intended for the advanced seekers of self-realization. This is, for lack of better words, the real explanation that Hinduism provides. A better way of describing answers at the absolute level is to call them higher truths. The second type of answers is provided at what is called the transactional level. These tend to be simpler and direct. Although they may be philosophical at times, the transactional answer is typically taken from either the Purana, the mythology, or Itihasa, or historical accounts. Answers at the transactional level are meant to satisfy the curiosity of ordinary men and women who may be unable to grasp the answers at the absolute level. We can look at these transactional answers, which are not the ultimate answers, as lower truths rather than as untruths. Swami Vivekananda describes this aspect of Hinduism beautifully as follows. To the Hindu, man is not traveling from error to truth, but from truth to truth, from lower to higher truth. To him, all the religions, from the lowest fetishism to the highest absolutism, mean so many attempts of the human soul to grasp and realize the infinite, each determined by the conditions of its birth and association, and each of these marks a stage of progress. End of quote. It goes without saying that when we offer two answers to the same question, we run the risk of contradictions. Indeed, Hinduism's many lower truths are seen to be contradictory to its higher truths. Rather than seeing them as contradictory, we may see them as facets of the same truth that seeks to accommodate itself to different natures. It is much like a single ray of light passing through a prism and splitting into different colors. Although this method of providing two answers is done by design, it is not meant to deceive or manipulate. Rather, Hinduism's many answers are addressed to its many types of seekers, from the beginner to the advanced, from the child to the elder, from the student to the householder to the yogi, and from the sincere to the corrupt. Not all of us possess the clarity of mind and conviction of purpose to work towards self-realization. There are many of us who are yet to find even the ground under our feet. We struggle with the mundane challenges of life. Therefore, it is not a surprise when we struggle to grasp the soaring truths of the Upanishad. In spite of our failings, or perhaps because of them, we too need comfort. Hinduism, just as a benevolent mother would do, provides refuge to all of us under her spacious and hospitable tent. From the spiritual flights of Vedanta to rituals and worship with their attendant mythologies, from the agnosticism of the Buddhists to the atheism of the Jains, each and every one of us has a place in the Hindu's religion. It is with this accommodating spirit that we will now approach the question of what is the nature of God. What is the nature of God in Hinduism? Hinduism defines God at two levels. At the absolute level, God is Brahman. At the transactional level, God is worshipped as Ishvara. At the absolute level, God is known as Brahman. Brahman is Nirguna or unmanifest and therefore indescribable. Brahman can only be indicated. Brahman is the substratum in which all of creation emerges and dissolves. We will take a closer look at the nature of Brahman in a future episode. At the transactional level, the answer is further divided into three parts: causal, subtle, and material. The unmanifest Brahman, when manifest, is known as Saguna Brahman or Ishvara. Ishvara can be viewed as the causal aspect of Nirguna Brahman. Ishvara is the wielder of Maya or Shakti, a phenomenon that creates differentiation and makes creation possible. The cosmic dance of Ishvara and Shakti thus becomes the cause of all creation. From this cosmic dance arises Hiranyagarbha, the subtle aspect of Brahman. Hiranyagarbha literally means the womb of creation. If Brahman is seen as the source and Ishvara the cause, Hiranyagarbha can be seen as the mind of the cosmos. It is from this cosmic mind that all of creation emerges. What does this creation contain? We know that it contains material objects like universes, galaxies, stars, planets, our earth, us, and a million other things. We also know that it contains subtle entities that are not made of matter, like energy, gravity, space, time, ideas, thoughts, emotions, concepts, and many such things. If we take this even further, we see that creation contains even subtler entities that we can't even perceive directly. We have only an intuition about their existence, or we sense them because of their effect on other things, like black holes or dark energy or dark matter. It is also possible that the cosmos may contain things that we haven't even imagined yet. All of it lies in creation. This world of matter and subtle phenomena, which arises from the cosmic mind, the ancients called it Vishwa or Virat. At the absolute level, God is Brahman. It is the glory of Brahman that the Upanishad invokes in its songs. At the causal level, Saguna Brahman or Ishvara is worshipped as Shiva or Narayana. In the Veda, Ishvara is also referred to by such names as Purusha, Rudra, and Tvashtar. The subtle aspect of Brahman or Hiranyagarbha is referred to as Brahma, Prajapati, or Vishwakarma in Vedic lore. Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma are worshipped by the Hindus as the Holy Trinity, representing the three powers of Brahman: creation, sustenance, and dissolution. The gods of the phenomena are referred to as devatas in the Veda. They are gods with a lowercase g, for whom sacrifices are prescribed in the Veda. While the devatas such as Indra, Vayu, Agni, Varuna, and Surya are revered and appeased for their powers to provide rain, avert famines, and provide offspring, the Veda unfailingly reminds us that they are but aspects of the formless Brahman. Thus, over time, Hinduism grew to accommodate thousands, if not millions, of such devatas. There are various perceptions of Hinduism when viewing its theistic traditions. Some perceive it to be polytheistic, with many gods. Some others have called it henotheistic, with many equal gods but one favorite god. None of these are right. In its theistic traditions, Hinduism is monotheistic. The Saivite, Vaishnavite, and Shakti traditions are strictly monotheistic, in that they treat all deities as merely manifestations of one supreme deity. All of Hinduism's theistic traditions ultimately converge into the core monism of Vedanta. Let us take a closer look at the concept of God presented in Hinduism. The world contains innumerable objects of indescribable beauty. Freshly bloomed flowers in the park, the ethereal beauty of the rising sun, starry skies. At some point in our lives, each of us has inevitably asked, "What is this beauty? Where does it come from?" We find the same question in the Veda. Whence is this, when there was neither aught nor naught, and darkness was hidden in darkness? Who projected this universe? Asks the Veda. These questions are as old as humankind itself. Millions of attempts have been made to answer them. Millions more attempts will be made. Each time these questions were answered, a kernel of truth was carried over to the succeeding generations, and thus truth gathered momentum over time. So it was in ancient India. The earliest questions on creation and God come from the Sankhyan philosophers. Sage Kapila, the Sankhyan Rishi and an avatar of Mahavishnu, is rightly described as the first philosopher of humankind. The Sankhyans were much like us today, awestruck by the wonder of creation. They marveled at its astonishing diversity. At first they wondered why there was anything at all in this world. Then they deduced that creation, just as a giant tree evolves from a tiny seed, creation came through a process of evolution. By knowing one lump of clay in our hand, we may know the nature of all the clay in the universe, says the Veda. Seeing this uniformity, the Sankhyains deduced the nature of the cosmos from their observations of nature. They came to an important conclusion that the manifested or the grosser state is the effect, and the finer state the cause. In other words, creation is a process of evolution from a finer cause to a coarser effect. Creation is a process of evolution from a finer cause to a coarser effect. Thousands of years ago, sage Kapila demonstrated that creation is the effect of a cause, and that destruction was the effect reversing itself into the cause. When a man dies, he returns to the elements that created him. When the earth dies, it will return to the cosmic elements, and so it goes on. The cause and the effect are not different. They seem different because they appear in different forms. The Sankhyains were arguably the first to put forth a theory of evolution, although it dealt with the cosmos and creation and not with organic life, as Charles Darwin did. There is one other fact to learn from the Sankhyains about creation and dissolution. A baby is not born after just one day in the mother's womb. A seed does not instantly turn into a tree. Rather, everything goes through a process of gestation. Similarly, creation, the Sankhyains said, goes through a period of dormancy before it projects itself as the cosmos. This entire cycle of creation, dissolution, and gestation, they called it a kalpa. This is all well and good, but the question remains, where does it all come from? Out of what is the universe produced? From the fine form of a preceding universe, said the Sankhyains, and they left it there. A theory that described the cosmos as an interplay of dual, independent realities, Purusha and Prakriti, or matter and consciousness. The Vedantins pick up this thread from where the Sankhyains leave it. Even if we work through infinite kalpas, we are still left with the question of, but where does it all come from? Where does it go into? Where does the matter in creation come from? Where does consciousness come from? There must be a source, for something cannot manifest from nothing. To answer this, the Vedantins came up with the word Brahman, the single, non-dual reality from which all other realities emerge and into which they return. God is ekatvam, oneness. There is nothing else, they said. Many religions say that there is only one God, but Hinduism says there is only God. The word God has come to mean many things in the modern world, many of which are frankly ungodly. The ancient Hindus conceived of God as the ultimate single source of existence, consciousness, and bliss. As Sri Bhagavan Krishna says in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, from the highest God to the lowest ant, I am the one consciousness that pervades all of creation. It is from such an exalted foundation of Brahman that the other gods of Hinduism arise. The journey of man towards God proceeds along three phases. At first, we approach God from a distance. Seeing God from afar, we are struck by the mystery of its nature and revel in the joy of discovery. Humbled and awed by its creation, we surrender to God. But we act as distant observers. We see God as an object that resides outside of and apart from creation. We see God as separate from ourselves. This act of seeing God and self as two separate entities is dualism. The Sanskrit word for it is advaita. As we become familiar with God, we muster the courage to approach it. We marvel at its resplendent and benevolent nature. We begin to see God as perfection, and we see ourselves as tiny fractions of this perfection. We see that God and man are but one, but we see ourselves as a piece of God. This is non-dualism, but of a qualified nature. In the Hindu philosophical tradition, we call it Visishta Advaitam. Finally, we begin to merge with this perfection. We begin to understand that the infinite being cannot be carved into tiny pieces. We see that we are indeed the whole and the infinite perfection itself. Tat Tvam Asi. That God, you are yourself. This we call Advaitam. Through the Vedic worship of Agni, Indra and Surya, we display our reverence and awe of gods who we see as separated from us. When we worship Ishvara, we bow down to the causal source of creation and the giver of existence. It is when we begin to see Brahman that we begin to truly understand our own nature. There is a story of a man who once went to visit Sri Ramana Maharishi. Sri Ramana Maharishi, if you haven't heard of him, was a Jivan Mukta, which is to say that he was an enlightened sage with a mortal body. The man who went to visit him sat in a corner and listened quietly as the Maharishi spoke to the gathering about the nature of the self. At the end of the discourse, and after everyone had left, the man mustered the courage to speak to Sri Ramana. He said, "I tried hard to understand what you said about the Atman, but I simply couldn't. I am but a simple man. All I can understand is that my Narayana is with me. All I can understand is that my Narayana is with me." The Maharishi silently nodded in agreement. The man then asked, "Have you seen Narayana?" And the Rishi nodded yes. Eager, the man asked, "Can I see him?" To which the Rishi yet again nodded yes. Unable to control his excitement, the man persisted with his questions. "Will I really be able to see him? Please tell me the truth." The man knew that Ramana Maharishi spoke only the truth. And the Rishi nodded yes, yet again. And the man was overjoyed. "Oh, I'm so happy to hear these words from you, sire. I have but one last question. What will my dear Narayana tell me when I see him?" he asked. Sri Ramana Maharishi finally spoke. He replied, "When you see the gracious one, Sri Narayana, he will ask you to understand the nature of your own self." This is such a great story. It reveals to us the nature of God, while in fact offering a lesson on ourselves. Like that man, all of us have questions. Is Brahman really real? Is Ishvara real? Are these merely ideas concocted by our minds, which we know can play tricks on us? Who is to say that God isn't a convenient fiction that we have invented to pacify ourselves in our fear of death? These are all valid questions. There is no proof or evidence that God exists. Those who are able to move easily past things such as proof and evidence have no such questions. As for the rest of us, I offer you this. There is one thing we know as an undeniable fact. We know that we are conscious. Everything else can be doubted. Everything else must be doubted. I can even doubt the existence of my own body, as real as it seems. I think I have a body only because I can feel it. I can touch it. I can see it. I can feel it. These are sensations through which I decipher the existence of things. But where do my feelings come from? And where do they disappear into? The answer is my consciousness. The French philosopher René Descartes, who tried to prove his existence, famously said, "Cogito ergo sum." I think, therefore I am. He got so close to the answer, he left out a crucial question. Yes, I think, therefore I am. But in what do my thoughts come and go? They come and they go in our consciousness. All of this creation, with its billions of galaxies and trillions of stars and everything in it, would not exist if you were not conscious. They are nothing but experiences in your consciousness. No man has stepped outside of his body or mind into the world. He experiences it only through his senses and intellect. What makes this experience possible? His consciousness. When I die, the world will disappear, never again to be experienced by the same body and mind that I have right now. Where does your existence come from? Who do you borrow it from during this brief period on earth? Where does your consciousness come from? What is the source of your bliss? Anything that you can experience is fleeting and therefore can be doubted. That which you are unable to experience, but is the cause of your experience, that is eternal and cannot be doubted. In this lies the answer to the nature of God. Follow your stream of consciousness. It will lead you to yourself. It will lead you to God. It will lead you to the timeless truth of the Upanishad, that you are a child of immortal bliss. I pray to Maheshwara, I pray to Narayana, I pray to Parashakti for their blessings and grace, so we may all make progress in this journey towards self-realization and finding lasting peace.
கப்பால கன்ற சுடரினை பிண்டத்துள் பார்ப்பாயடி கூதம்பாய், பிண்டத்துள் பார்ப்பாயடி. அண்டத்து கப்பால கன்ற சுடரினை பிண்டத்துள் பார்ப்பாயடி கூதம்பாய், பிண்டத்துள் பார்ப்பாயடி. தீர்க்க ஆகாயம் தெரியாத தன்மை போல் பார்க்கப்படாதானடி கூதம்பாய், பார்க்கப்படாதானடி. வெட்ட வேளிக்குள் வேறும் பாழாய் நின்றதை இட்டமாய் பார்ப்பாயடி கூதம்பாய், இட்டமாய் பார்ப்பாயடி. தாவரமில்லை தனக்கொரு வீடில்லை, தேவாரம் ஏதுக்கடி கூதம்பாய், தேவாரம் ஏதுக்கடி. என்றும் அழியாமை எங்கும் நிறைவாகி நின்றது பிரம்மமடி கூதம்பாய், நின்றது பிரம்ம